Hi, I'm Grant from Blackmagic Design, and today I'd love to show you some new updates we've been working on. Obviously working very hard on considering the circumstances we've got going on at the moment. We've also got some new products to show you, so let's have a look. Now the first thing I thought would be worth doing is doing a bit of a summary on ATEM Mini. Everything we're going to be showing you is going to be built on top of what we're already doing with ATEM Mini now, so I think it's probably worth just starting with a summary of kind of its feature set. Now, we've been very happy with the response to ATEM Mini. Yeah, we worked very, very hard on it, and it's been remarkable what we've been able to do. You know, it's an all-in-one control panel-based design, so what that means is the switcher and the control panel are actually the one single unit. It's very easy to use. You just push the buttons on the front to change between cameras, so it couldn't be any simpler. It outputs to a USB as a webcam, so you can use any video software such as Open Broadcaster if you're streaming the video. It even works with Skype for presentations. It's got 4 HDMI inputs, so it can support up to 4 video cameras, such as low-cost consumer cameras like I have here. You know, as you can see, I've got that plugged into input 1. That's just a cheap consumer camera. Now, these HDMI inputs also work with computers for like slideshows if you're using PowerPoint or Keynote, and also they work with gaming consoles. That's because each input has got a separate Teranex scaler and standards converter, so you can pretty much just plug anything in and it works. So you can actually set the switcher standard independently of what the video formats are. Now there's also a HDMI output for connecting to TVs and video projectors or even an external recorder. There's also a built-in DVE which lets you do picture-in-picture effects, and also you can do animated DVE transitions with that as well. And yeah, that DVE stands for digital video effects, which is those little picture-in-picture type effects you see where if you're doing like an interview you can have the person you're interviewing in a little window that sits there and floats above the background. Now, of course, ATEM Mini supports multiple languages, so it's very, very powerful just as a product like that. But then if you use the ATEM Software Control app, you get a whole range of professional broadcast features open up. Now, the ATEM Software Control works on the same connection that the USB works with. So if you look at the USB here, and if they switch to the user interface, you know, if I unplug the USB here, you can plug it back in again. You can see that the user interface comes back up again. There it is. And I can go through all my palettes and change transitions and access all these powerful broadcast features in the product. Now that's the same connection that the webcam, so the webcam video is coming through the USB, and if I run Skype or Open Broadcast on this computer here, the video will come through this USB, but I'm also controlling through the same USB back to the switcher. Makes it super easy to use. Now, because I've opened up all the broadcast features with the ATEM software, it's got a lot more controls than the panel has. So you can see I can do transitions, which I'll select bars because I've only got one camera. Or what will I select? Yeah, looks like that. So you can see I can do transitions between video sources. I can change to a dip or wipes. And I've got all the different palettes here with all different upstream keys and chroma keys and things. So you can see there's a lot of capability I've got in the switcher page. It opens up a lot of features that are sort of hidden in there. Now I can also load media. If I go to the media page, I've got all the 20 still frames in here. So this is all the media, and I've got a graphic here with an alpha channel in it. So that graphic's now loading into media pool spot number 1, and it's automatically outputting to the media player. So now that graphic is available as a video source inside the switcher, and its alpha channel has been converted into a key channel internally. So if I go down to turn off my upstream keyer and go to the downstream keyer, and I've got that media player coming in, now I can turn that graphic on. It'll overlay on top of the live video. And in fact, I can even fade it on and off, which is quite nice. And you can also tie it to a transition. So when I do my transition, it'll fade on and off with the next source. So it's quite powerful. So there's all kinds of hidden stuff in there like that, and that's how powerful the media page is. It lets you load all those graphics in. There's also, you get access to the audio mixer in here in the Fairlight page. You've got all sorts of powerful audio mixing capabilities with equalization and dynamics like limiter, a noise gate, all kinds of things like that. So if I go into the equalization, you can see I can move around and change the equalization curve. And every single input has this. I can go in, turn on compressors and limiters. It's really quite amazing how much power I have in the Fairlight page, and that full audio mix is built in. So the other thing, one of the last things I probably want to just summarise quickly, and it's going to matter for some of the things I'm going to show you in a second, is one of the things a lot of people don't understand is that the ATEM Mini also works as a program preview switcher. Now this is the way big broadcast switches work. So at the moment, when you use this ATEM Mini, in fact, I'll Let me turn off the keyer so I can see the video source change. When you use ATEM Mini as standard, you just switch between the camera sources. I've only got one camera plugged in at the moment. And that's called a cut bus style switching. But I can change it to a program preview style switching, which lets you select the source and check it before you bring it on air. And that's much better when you're doing sort of high-end work and you want to make sure you don't make mistakes. So to change that, you just go into the settings. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong window. I got to go down to the ATEM utility, and it sees the ATEM Mini. And I can go down to here and I see where it got a setting that sets it to program preview style switching. So now when I save that, what you'll notice is that in fact I'll quit the setup utility, and you'll see that now when I select a source, it's changed the way the front panel behaves. What I've done is I've enabled number 2, and if you set the preview out of the video output, you can see this. So now instead of switching the source immediately, I can actually decide which source I'd like, and then when I press the cut or auto button, then it does the switch. So it lets you do it as a 2-step process. So you can set up what you want to switch to first, then change it. So for instance, if you hit cut, it'll do a cut, and now it's moved to camera 2. I'm back on camera 1 as what I've preset. I can go auto, and you can see it did a transition back to 1. So the program preview way of switching is what all the top-end professional guys in broadcast use, and we'll take advantage of that of some of the things I'm about to show you. So ATEM Mini, you can see there's nothing about ATEM Mini that makes it a low-end switcher. It's extremely powerful, and it's really great value at only $295. I think that it's one of the reasons why it's been so well received. You know, we didn't dumb it down and make a very simple switcher. We made a very powerful switcher, which by using the ATEM software control app to open all that up. Now, with so many features, we've noticed a lot of people using ATEM Mini on some pretty big complicated jobs. Now that's amazing because it shows how powerful it is. A little bit surprising, but it is pretty cool. People are using it for seminars, concerts, even some outdoor sports, all kinds of things. You know, we thought people had sort of used fixed cameras mostly, but people are actually using camera operators where they're actually, you know, controlling the camera. So what we've done is to help this out. Well, essentially, what people are doing is they're using, specifically using Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras with ATEM Mini, and this is really an interesting issue because we hadn't quite thought that that would be so popular. So you can see I've got some Blackmagic Cinema Camera 4Ks here. Now, I think the reason why this is happening is a lot of people already have these Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras for production work. So when they're doing a live program, they're just using them with ATEM Mini to do live production with them as well. Now, obviously, the benefits is it's amazing picture quality. I mean, the picture quality of it, these are digital film cameras, so they look incredible. They're also fantastic at low light. And they've got a reasonably big viewfinder compared to consumer cameras. Like you can see the difference between the consumer camera here and the bigger viewfinder here. So they work a little bit like a studio camera. However, there are some problems when using pocket cinema cameras for live production. You know, they are digital film cameras, and so there is some limitations. Like for example, you can't use the film gamma because the video looks flat. So you kind of need to use a 3D lookup table to make the video output look better, to make it look, you know, more like, you know, finished video. And that's a bit more complicated to set up. Also, the in-camera recording's nice, but you kind of, if you're doing multiple cameras, you kind of need to synchronize them so you can do some multicam editing, and that's not really something that's supported. Plus, it's sort of hard to control the cameras when you're working by yourself, so matching the cameras is a bit difficult. So we've been thinking about this, and we've developed a new software update for the Pocket Cinema cameras. Now, it adds the studio camera features from our studio cameras into the Pocket Cinema cameras. And it works with all the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K and the 6K models. There's also a software update for the ATEM Mini to do camera control. Now, there's no SDI connection to the cameras, and our studio cameras work by sending the information from the switcher to the cameras via the SDI return feed, and there is none in this case. But the HDMI link that we have has a data wire on the communication. So even though there's video coming down the HDMI to the switcher, there's also some communication going back to the cameras. And we set all this up so it would be possible to do this. So we can actually get the ATEM Mini talking to the cameras back through the video connection. So that gives us control. Now we can change all the camera settings. We can do lens control. We can do tally. And also there's a DaVinci primary color corrector in there. We can do DaVinci primary color correction in there as well. Now, if you look down at the user interface, you can see that there's actually a camera page that's appeared, and we've got the camera control stuff here, which is pretty cool. Now, what I'll do is I'll unplug this camera and I'll plug in these cameras here, and I can show you how this all works. So let me just unplug this guy here, and I'll put it under the bench. And I've got these cameras wired up into here, so I can plug those in. And get my cables. There's 4 of them. There they are. I'll plug this guy in here. Okie dokie. So what you should have seen is that now we have the first thing that's most obvious is the tally lights. So let me show you the tally. Now the camera is one thing that's worth noting. When the camera's plugged in, it detects that it's talking to an A10 Mini, and it switches the camera into studio mode automatically. And also it'll actually set the video standard of the cameras, apart from the first camera in camera 1, because the switcher takes camera 1's video standard, and then the other cameras will then follow the switcher, so it automatically sets itself up. Now let me show you the tally lights. You should be able to see over on the camera over there, you can see the tally light changing, and because I'm using preview, what it means is as I step around and try, you can see the preview lights moving around so that the presenter can see which camera's about to go on air, and then when I bring the camera on air, it switches across, and I can select the next camera, go cut, select the next one. So you can see it's really quite powerful. If I do a transition, both cameras are on air for a short period of time, so you'll be able to see both tally lights go red and then it switches across. So obviously when you're doing program preview switching, the camera that was just on air is now armed for, is the preview camera for the next transition. So you can see really how powerful this is, and the presenters, it's just like a studio camera, the presenters now can see which camera is on. And also the other thing we've done on the back on the LCD, you can see that we've got a, if I bring camera 1 on air, you can see I've got a preview label, and when I bring it on, I've got an on-air label, and that's independent of the other screen overlays that are there. So that really makes it much nicer for if there's a camera operator to see what's going on. Now, the other option features you've got is obviously we can control the iris. I've got camera 1 on air and I've got video out. Yeah, it's on air. And so I can come into here and I can now adjust the iris. I've got full iris control on the camera, and you can see the screen is adjusting. So that's controlling the lens on the camera. So you got all that. I've also got ISO settings. I can set the ISO, which come up as gain on, in the broadcast terminology, ISO is the same as gain. In fact, it's, it's gain, so I can bring that up. And then I can, so he knows the light reduces. There it is there. So I've got quite a lot of stuff. I can even do color tint, so I can change the color, because there's a DaVinci primary color corrector. So I can go off to blue, I can go really red if I like. So it goes nuts. And also, this is a DaVinci primary color corrector, so I've got gamma, lift, gain. But if I click this button here, I actually get full color wheels, like very much like DaVinci Color, a DaVinci color corrector. So I've got a lot more control here. And of course I can reset. And you can do the individual channels here as well. What's interesting about DaVinci is you obviously got shadows, mids and highlights like a normal color corrector, or lift, gamma and gain is a more color correction terminology. But one thing about DaVinci is it's a YRGB color corrector. So you can even do the Y channel independently of the red, green and blue channels. And that's how DaVinci works. Oops, I'm a little bit overcooked here, so I'll bring it down a little bit. But you can bring up the Y channel independently. Whoops, I've gone way too far there. But you can see, well, in fact, I'm doing black, which is not the, what I want to do. So maybe I can bring up the whites in the, see, I can sort of start to bring the whites up and they pop a bit and sort of pulls the whites out, because that's the way DaVinci Resolve works. So the primary color corrector is actually the same between the two products, so that way you've got, if you're used to using DaVinci, you should be able to actually do some really creative looks in here, so it's really nice. Now, one of the other nice things about the camera controller is it doesn't lock out. On our bigger cameras, the switcher actually takes over the control of these settings in the cameras. But in the pocket camera situation, it doesn't lock out the camera settings, so you should be able to change settings locally, and then when you change something here, it'll override that. So it helps you to have retain a bit of control on the camera. Now, when you're working as a studio camera, you're still able to record, but it'll work in Blackmagic RAW and 4K in the case of these cameras, or 6K in the Blackmagic Cinema camera, Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 6K. I think with these new features, you really get a very professional sort of television studio. I mean, you've got full camera control, you can control all the cameras here, and you can adjust them all, you can match the cameras. It's really quite powerful. And so obviously it's really important that all your cameras are matched. The presenters can see when they're on air with the tally light. You get wonderful color graded digital film images. I mean, you can really spend a lot of time getting the hang of really how to make a wonderful looking digital film looking actual sort of image quality, or just go nuts and do something really over the top. So I mean, that's the great thing about sort of the freedom to be really creative, and having all that control, I think, is giving you access to getting beautiful quality video out, but you're still able to record the Blackmagic RAW files internally and color grade them later. So the new ATEM Switches 8.2 software update, which is what you need for the ATEM Mini, that'll be available today as a free update. It'll support all the AT Mini switches that have shipped up until now. And the new Blackmagic Camera 6.9 update is also a free update, and that's available today as well. And that'll support all the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K and Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K models that we've shipped up until now. Now that's not all we have today. We've also I want to introduce a new model of AT Mini, and it's called AT Mini Pro. Now the first thing to know about this new model is that it's got the exact same features of the AT Mini model, but it also adds a few new and very powerful features. So let's have a look. What I'll do is I'll bring it out, and you can see, here it is here. So there it is. As you can see, it's very similar to the current model. It's got a few more buttons on the front, so I can bring it up and have a look there. So you can see the front, and you can also see the rear. It's got the exact same connectors on the rear panel. So if you can get a shot of them there. So it's got the same connections as the AT Mini, so it's really easy to set up. But there is some extra controls on the front panel, as you can see around here. So look, what I'll do is I'll plug it in. So I'll unplug the AT Mini, I'll plug in the AT Mini Pro. So the first thing I'll do is plug some power in. I'll plug in some control. And I'll move this guy out of the way. I'll put him there. And I'll plug in some video. I'll plug our cameras in. So it's all the same. Oops, get my connectors lined up here. I'll put this one aside. So look, put him there so you can see it. I can get a shot of the model there. Now, really the biggest feature of this model, I'll just lock down the power so I don't pull it out by accidentally. Now, the biggest, most sort of important feature in this new model is it's got built-in hardware. It's got a built-in hardware streaming engine. Now, this is a big deal because the hardware has been specifically designed for streaming. Now, one of the problems with using streaming software is, depending on the computer, streaming software can drop frames. It's really, encoding a stream is a pretty complex task for a computer to do. It needs a lot of power to do it well. But now we have that hardware built in. It's specifically designed to generate a stream, which means you get smoother looking images and you don't get dropped frames. And also, you don't need to convert the webcam compression to the streaming compression, so you don't get like double generation of video compression. The program output, the first time the video is compressed is in the hardware encoder, which is built into the AT Mini Pro. So you get the streaming, the video output, the program output is directly converted to the streaming codec. Now, you don't need any extra software because the streaming is built in. You don't need any extra software running on the computer, which is nice because the computer can just use the software control. You don't need to have an extra app running in the background that's doing all that streaming. And one of the problems with streaming software is it's got a lot of complex settings. We've made it a much, much simpler process. AT Mini Pro makes streaming really simple. So look, let me show you how it works. Now, one of the things that it uses the Ethernet connection. Now, on AT Mini, the Ethernet's used for control, but on AT Mini Pro, you can stream via the same Ethernet connection as you're using for control. Now, the advantage to this is that you can actually do your control and the streaming through the USB signal. So let's plug that in. I've got an Ethernet cable here, and I'll replace the USB with this. And then what we can do is we can use the computer to share its internet, so we can use a mobile streaming. Now I've got this computer set up to have Wi-Fi to connect to the internet, and I've set the sharing settings to allow the Ethernet to share via the Wi-Fi. So the Wi-Fi is doing the internet connection, and then the Ethernet connection I'll plug in here is now got the internet to the AT Mini through this computer. So this computer is basically converting the Wi-Fi to Ethernet. So I'll get rid of the USB, and I'll plug this in here. I'll plug in the Ethernet. There it is there. Now, it's just come up. Normally, probably because we practiced this before, normally you just go up to the connection menu up there and click connect and it'll come up. And in fact, I'll do that so you can see how that works. So we've added also another change here where it can find the switches on the network. In this case, it's directly connected. You can just click the AT Mini Pro and then connect. It's already connected. Oh, I did unselected. So you can see now what I've got is I've got the AT Mini Pro working through the control through the Ethernet, and you can see all the control works fine. Oops, let me plug a different camera in. So you can see I've got the two different cameras. That all works fine. And I can click the pages. I can go to the camera page and do some control. That's my on-air camera. So it's quite powerful. Now the switcher can now see the computer, and the ATEM software control can control it, so that's all working fine. But the switcher can also see the internet, so we can use it for the live mobile stream, because now it's doing both. Now what I'll do is I'll show you where that's set up, because it's a little tricky, but if you go into the system preferences and you go to the sharing folder, you can see I've got internet sharing selected here, and you can see that I'm sharing the Wi-Fi, and that's connected via this little, that's the adapter brand here. So that's all you need to do. You just need to go into the internet sharing, and that's on a Mac. On Windows it's a different setting, but you can do the similar thing on Windows. And now I've got the internet on this, and it's going out through the Wi-Fi. Now what that also means is that we can set up to do streaming. So what I'll do is I'll go and select YouTube. So what I do is I go into the output palette here, and you can see I've got a live stream palette. You can see here it is here. Now I'll select YouTube, and there it is there. Now what I need to do is I need to get a streaming key from the YouTube server. So if I go down to, now I've got that page set up, just open here. This is the streaming page to set up a stream on YouTube. If I go down to here, I can get my streaming key, and I can copy that out. Then I can go across and paste that streaming key in there. I can also set the quality. I'll use streaming high, and that's it. Now you want to set the quality high enough so you don't get pixels. And as you can see, I just selected streaming high because you want to make sure you get enough bandwidth to handle, particularly if you're doing higher frame rates. You'll obviously need more data if you're using higher frame rates. Now you can change the ATEM Mini Pro to a lower frame rate if you like, and the interface converters will actually take care of it. So if you had like a gaming console that was doing a high frame rate, you could just switch the ATEM Mini Pro down to like 24 frame or something like that to allow the data rate to go lower. And then it's easy to stream, but the input converter will just take care of switching the video input down to that lower frame rate. Now what I'll do is I'll go into the streaming here, and I've copied the key in. So what I'll do is now I can pretty much just start streaming by going on air. Now there's a button on the front panel here, and I can actually make it go on air just by pushing on air. Now what that'll do is now it's live broadcasting to YouTube. Now it'll take about 30 seconds or so before it comes through, so I'll just come in here and I'll just reset that page, and I think it's looking pretty good there, and it's all looking like it's running. So yeah, it does take, there's obviously a bit of caching through the YouTube path. It'll take a little bit before it sort of comes through and cleans up. So you can set the streaming from the front panel like I just did here, or you can also do it from the palette here as well. Now the other thing we've got is, when you're live switching, you're not actually going to have the streaming palette open. You're going to have transition palettes or care palettes open. So you can also get a status of the streaming. So if you click on this display status down here, it'll show you the status information down the bottom of the page. Now what that'll do is it'll show you a few bits of detail, like obviously whether it's on air, but it also shows you the data rate that's needed for the stream. Now that's really important, and it live updates as based on the video you're switching. So different types of video sometimes will create different data rates, and it's also obviously set by the quality menu that you set as well. Now the data rate's important because that's how much data you'll need from your ISP to make sure you've got enough internet bandwidth to get your stream out. So it'll be good to know, you can do some experiments with that and make sure you've got a lot of enough data rate. You can obviously drop the data rate down lower if you're having some issues with getting data, particularly if you're mobile streaming and maybe you're tethering a phone or something like that. Now the other bit of information down there is also the cache. Now it just says OK at the moment, but it can also be a percentage. ATEM Mini Pro's got a bit of memory in it, and what it tries to do is keep the stream going out. Now if there's an interruption to the internet or some congestion, it'll cache and then try to get it through as the internet comes back online. So you'll often see the, sometimes, well you won't hopefully see it, but you can see if it's getting behind, you'll see that this percentage goes up, and that means it's actually having trouble getting the data out. Mostly you'll see that if someone trips over your internet cable and knocks the internet out, and then you might see that. Now if we go to the YouTube page, we can see that we've got the live stream coming through here. Our condition is good, and if I change one of the sources, you'll see the source change here, and that's your stream. Now Now there's obviously a little bit of a delay on this because it takes a while for the stream to get through and then come back through via YouTube. So that's essentially what protects you from choppy internet data rates, because the YouTube is also caching some of the data for you. And as you do different transitions to different cameras, you can see that program will come out and it'll change on the video up there. Yeah, there it goes there. So you can see it's 10 seconds or so. It's not too long. Now, it's funny, even if you just used AT Mini Pro for a streaming interface, it'd probably be worth it just for that. Now, one thing that's also worth thinking about, we've also thought about high-end broadcast engineers. Now, obviously you can see in here it's pretty simple to get the streaming going, but if you're using like a high-end work and you need to tweak the settings, you can get in and customize an XML file. What we've done is we've put all the settings that are in here in an XML file, and you can go in there and you can customize that XML file and get through it. And there's details on how to do that in the manual. So if you're technically minded, you can just go in the XML file and you can tweak the settings. You could even add other services. You could add a custom streaming service into that XML file, and then it'll appear in the menus here and populate. Like you could even run, like if you're using you could remove services from the XML file if you wanted. So say you're setting up a community group with an AT Mini Pro and you didn't want them really changing the settings, you could take out the settings in the XML file you don't want. So that's in the user folder for the application preferences, and you can see how that works. In the manual's got some details on it. Now, one of the other features we've got in here is we thought, well, with a powerful streaming engine built in, we thought it'd be good if we could actually record the stream as well. So what we did is we added the same software that runs on our HyperDeck Studio Mini into the AT Mini Pro. So this lets us record video direct to an external USB device, USB disk. Now this is an exact duplicate of the video you're streaming. The video is encoded with H.264 format with an AAC codec, which means you can upload the file to YouTube or any other streaming service later. Now this kind of protects against an internet outage. Like say you're doing a live stream and the internet went out. Well, if you're recording the stream, then you've always got something for upload later. Now you've also got a choice between different data rates. As you can see in the menu there, I've got the HyperDeck data rates, which are really high quality, almost they're broadcast quality data rates. And there's also some lower quality streaming data rates as well, which are pretty good, but they're more designed to allow you to get through lower internet speeds. Now, there's a button for the recording on the front panel as well. You can see it right there. And there's also a disk status light just above it. So you get the status of the disk. Now, the disk status light will show green when the disk is ready to record. It'll show red when you are recording. It also blinks slowly if your disk is about to become full. So that's very much like a HyperDeck. Because the data is recorded in H.264, it's actually low enough so you can use a mechanical hard disk or a USB thumb drive or something like that. Now, to show you this, what I've actually got a mechanical hard disk here. If I plug in this here, this is a mechanical disk. Now, I've unplugged the USB because I'm using Ethernet for control. So if I plug this in, mechanical disks are a little bit slower to get going because they've got to spin up. But these are incredibly low cost, these disks. And you can record for hours without it getting expensive. So what's really nice about that is if you can record every job you do, and that'll mean you can archive everything you've ever done. So you can see the lights come up green there. And if I hit record, now I'm recording the disk. Now, so you can see very clearly when you're recording. And it also supports the disk being accidentally unplugged. So I'm recording currently on that. Now, if I just yank this cable out, which is really what you normally wouldn't do, but I can do it. So what I'll do is, instead of stopping the recording gracefully, I'll just yank the cable out like that. And now if I plug that disk into the computer, I can mount that disk and I can show you the file. So again, it's a mechanical disk, so it takes a moment to spin up. There it is. And I think which file was the one we just created? There it is there. So you can see it's very fast. It's a very fast file. It's very easy to, you can use it for, it's really fast file. It's got that icon preview. I don't like icon previews. They're confusing. So you can see that the files are very fast to shuttle. So this is great if you want to edit the files later because it works just like a normal editing video file. Now the other thing you can do is I can record to an SD card, a thumb drive. Really anything works. So if I plug this in, even a thumb drive's fine. I can plug that in there, and you can see that it's come up. Oh, there it goes. Now I can hit record. There it is. You can connect now. One thing I'll show you just before I move on to the next point is that in the record stream palette, whoops, you see there I am there. I've got a similar palette. I've also got display status there, so you can see that I'm now, the time I've got and the recording. But as you can see here, you can actually connect multiple disks via USB hub or a multi-dock, like multi-dock over there. So these settings for the recording are in the ATEM software control. Now the USB port on the ATEM Mini Pro here is now free because we're using the Ethernet, like I just mentioned. So this gives us the ability to really take over the USB port for all kinds of disks, hubs or multiple disks. Now you can see the settings here. I've got some control. Because I'm recording, actually I'll stop here so you can see the palettes are enabled. But you can actually see I've got the disk here selected, but I've got the ability to do more than one disk. Now I can start and stop recording also by the palette as well. So you can see I've started here, I can do it from the front panel. So it's pretty easy. And I've got all my status down here. So if I go to other palettes and I'm doing some transitions, I've still got the status down the bottom here, and I can still see what's going on with the streaming and the recording, which I'm doing both at the moment. And you can start and stop those independently of each other. Now, what I'll do is I'll show you some multiple disk stuff. I'll go back to the output palette. In fact, I'll close the streaming palette, just focus on the record palette, because what I'll do is I'll show you how it handles multiple disks. Now, for that, what I'll do is I'll change to a multi-dock, because the, I'll stop recording, and I'll unplug the thumb drive, which is one of those thumb drives that comes apart in pieces, so that's awesome. I've got a collection of bits. So what I'll do is I'll unplug the, leave my mechanical disk aside, and I've got a multi-dock here. So you can see a now basically Blackmagic multi-dock allows you to plug 4 disks on the single USB connection. So it's really very much like, it's basically, and it's really just for me to show you a good way of plugging in multiple disks. You don't need to use one of these, of course. But it's a great way of showing 4 disks on a single USB connection, because that's essentially all it really is. It's got a single USB on the back, and well, in fact there's 2 USBs. You can have it groups at 2, 2 groups at 2 if you like. But I can plug this in. I'll use the cable I was using for control before, and I'll plug it in. And I've got a bunch of disks here. So I'll plug one of the disks in. Oops, wrong way around. Now that's now put that SSD on the USB chain, and you can see it'll appear in the palette. There it is. And you can see it's come up the disk screen, so it's good to record. I can start recording on that disk, and you can see the palettes come up. Now, what I can do is I can plug in a second disk, and it'll show you how. So this is a very good scenario, right? You might be recording a performance. You got one disk in, that's recording. Now I need to be able to, that disk's getting full, I might be able to swap over. So what I'll do is I'll plug a second disk in. In fact, I'll plug all the disks in. Why not? There, so now I've got 4 disks, and they'll all come up, and they're all on the single USB chain. So what I'll be able to do is come over here to this menu, and you see there's a second disk menu here. Now, what I can do is I can select which disk I like. So I could maybe pick that disk, and I can switch disks while it's recording. So if I click this switch disk button, you should see that the disk changes. There it is there. Now what I've got is I've got it now, the second disk is busy, and the first disk's come free, so now I can move to a different disk here. I can switch disks again. So that means you can swap disks while you're recording. Now the other thing is you can do is you can also swap disks by pressing and holding the record button. So if you watch the palette here and you hold the record button down, it'll switch over. That's something hyperdecks do. It's the same method for swapping disks that works on all the hyperdeck recorders. And if I do it again, just swapped. So you can see the front panel of the multi-dock. If you get a shot of that, when I hold it down, you see it switch over. You'll see that the indicator's changed, but you can also see it changing over in the palette here. So there is a switch button, but you don't necessarily need to use it. You can actually swap disks from the front like the hyperdecks do. So you've got that dedicated switch button, because that's fast, obviously. Holding the button down takes a second to switch, whereas that's quicker. And that can be really useful, because if you switch disks, the disk that just came offline now is the one you can actually give to an editor, and you can start editing up something that might have happened in your performance, So if you're doing a sporting event, often they'll have a package at the end of the program that's had a lot of highlights. So you can get the disc out, get it to an editor, you can use that content to edit something up quickly, and then when the show finishes, you've actually got content from the show because you can swap the discs around. So you can see as we swap discs, we can move around and use any slot we like, swapping the discs, changing and recording between slots. So I'm using a Blackmagic multi-dock here, but if you had more than one disc on a USB hub, it'd work exactly the same. There's also, as you can see, the status settings there as well. So you can see that disc changing stuff is happening down between the 1 and the 2. You can see which side you're on, and there's some information there, like the hyperdecks have. You can see what you're doing. Now, because of course, if you're live switching a program, you'd have our other palettes open most of the time, so you really don't want the recording or the streaming palette open. Now, what's really exciting is because we're using Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras, we can record in the cameras to Blackmagic RAW files. So this means that you can record in the cameras so you can edit the files later as a multicam edit. Like the new sync bin and the DaVinci Resolve cut page is perfect for this. However, if you really just want all your camera files to be synchronized, they need to have the same time code, and this is an important feature. So you'll notice that there's a setting here that says recording all the cameras. So actually what I'll do first, I'll show you, we also have a new timecode generator, which is a critical part of this, so I really probably should show you that first. So the timecode palette, if I go down to here, there's a timecode generator, and that's the timecode that's being generated. Now I have time of day. That's not actually the time of day, that's the wrong time. I think the computer must be the wrong time. So, but it also can do preset timecode now, so you've got a choice of both. So on the A10 Mini HDMI video out, that also has timecode, and that uses this timecode generator. The disc recordings will use the same timecode. So when you're recording in the cameras, what you can do is the timecode will actually be uploaded into all the cameras and then used on the Blackmagic RAW recording. So each camera has a matching timecode. So what this means is when you edit the files from all the cameras, they'll sync up automatically. So all I need to do is select that there, and then when I record, it'll trigger the start recording on all the cameras. And what you see is a orange tally light on all the cameras to tell you that they're on air. But when you switch around, you still see the red tally light is when it's on air, but you can see that the orange light indicates that all the cameras are actually recording. All those cameras just went into recording when I pressed record here. And if I stop, they'll stop and go back to, all the lights go off, except the one camera that's on air. And then when I record again, you see they've all gone orange apart from the camera that's on air. But every camera, so you can watch, particularly if you're switching while you're actually presenting, you can make sure that all your cameras are actually recording properly. And that there's no, if the card runs out and one of the cameras fills, then it'll go off. And of course you can still record to an external flash drive on all these cameras as well. So you want really long recordings, you could put flash drives on the cameras. Now the recording will be in sync. The Blackmagic RAW files in the cameras means, and this is really an important point, I think this is the bit that makes this exciting, is you're recording synchronized Blackmagic RAW files in the cameras, which means you can use a HD switcher for a live stream, but then edit incredible quality color graded Ultra HD master files later, because you can go back to the Blackmagic RAW files. Remember, the Blackmagic RAW files are in film gamma. So even though your camera output is a graded video image coming out because you've used the DaVinci Resolve color grader in the cameras, the file itself is actually still original film gamma, and it's the Blackmagic RAW file, which means the output as video of the cameras, you can use it for live switching and streaming, but the files won't have those color grades burned in. They'll stay digital film files in wide dynamic range, film gamma, so a colorist can grade them later. So that's perfect for DaVinci Resolve, as you can edit them all in the sync bin, then you can do a color grade and you get a feature film looking master. It goes well beyond what live production is normally able to do, because we're going to be really excited to see what people do with this. It's quite funny. Like you're able to literally do like a 4K edit on using a HD switcher. So it's pretty interesting. It's quite exciting. So it's also worth remembering that on this model in the A10 Mini Pro, that if you're not using USB for recording, you can still use it for a webcam out, because it works just like the A10 Mini model. So that's not all it has. The last big feature I want to talk about with A10 Mini Pro is a new multi-view on the video output. Now, on the front panel, A10 Mini Pro has a new video output selection buttons. Now, if you look down here, you can see them. Now, what these buttons let us do is change the source to the video out on the A10 Mini Pro. Now, the whole time we've been looking at this, we've been looking at the program out, which is selected down here, but we can also change to any of the camera sources as well. So if you look at the video out, which cut to that, you can see that we've got, that's the program output that we've been looking, and you can see I'm doing transitions. But sometimes if you're looping a computer through the ATEM Mini, say out to a projector, you'll want to use a dedicated video input to come out. So a good example is you might have a slideshow that you normally connect into your projector, but you want to get access to that slideshow because it actually looks pretty cool if you have it digitally into the switcher as one of the sources. If you're doing an education video and the presenter, the lecturer's got a camera or two on them, but they've also got slides. What you want to do is you want to feed their output into the switcher, and then the video output you want to be dedicated to, say, one of the sources. So say, for example, we had the slideshow connected to camera 1, you'd want to set camera 1 as the output, and then that output can go to the projector. So everyone that the lecturer is presenting to just sees their slideshow, but you've got access to the slides in the switcher as a video source. Now, if I'm changing transitions now, you can see that that doesn't change. That's a dedicated video out, and I can switch between different video sources coming into the switcher, and that's not the program out. That's that just stays on that camera. So you can see that's a really nice feature, and you can do that right from the front panel. It's got a little mini switcher and a switcher. But let's go to the multi-view. There it is there. Now you can see what the multi-view looks like, and as you can see, it's got all the cameras, and it's got our program and our preview on there as well. Now all I need to do is switch the M/V button on the front, which is for the multi-view, and that'll change the HTML output to output that multi-view. Now you can see there's a program output on the top right-hand side, and that's the stream being recorded. So the program view there that's the stream going out. Now the great advantage of using the program preview style switching, as you can see on the left-hand side, is that's the preview. Now I don't have this set up to program preview switching. I could change it, but I'll just mention it because we saw it before. But one of the things about having the preview view dedicated there is that the green view is the one that's on the preview source. So you can see what's on air, but simultaneously you can see what you're about to put on air. And that really helps reduce errors, because when you can see what you're going to select before you select it, you got a chance to really confirm that's the source you want, and then you trigger with the cut or the video, the auto buttons. That's why professionals in broadcast use program preview style switching. So you can see how the preview works as we did before. Now, if you're switching yourself while you're presenting, you'd probably want to just keep using the cut bus, which I'm doing here, and in that case you'll just look at the program view, because you really just want to press one button at once. When you're doing program preview switching, you got to select the source, then push the transition, but you don't often really want to do that if you're switching yourself, and that's very common with ATEM Mini, where the presenter is actually also doing a switch off the side when people can't see it, they're just using it by feel. Now you've also, if you look across the middle of the multi-view, you can see we've got all the view inputs are visible across the multi-view, right across the middle there. So you can see I've got camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and camera 4. Now you can also, in the settings, you can turn on audio meters for these. I don't actually have any audio meters turned on at the moment. It's not as important on ATEM Mini Pro, because you'll see in a minute. But each view can have an audio meter, and you can have custom labels. Those labels can be customized, and that's done in the switcher settings. So you can go into the switcher settings, and you can change things like switcher standard in there. Actually, if I can show, I can go into there. You can do all that through here, and you can also set up the multi-view over here, and you can turn on audio meters and things like that. See, there you go there. So I've turned on the audio meter. So there it is there. Now the bottom left-hand side, and what I'll do is I'll go back into the media player, and I'll load that, because I didn't load that into here. There it is there. I've got that is my media player. I can see the media player in the bottom left-hand view. So you've also got a visible of all 4 cameras and your graphic that you've got loaded as well, and that's really super useful. Now, this graphic had an alpha channel in it, so it'll overlay on top of video. You can see the background's just black. Now, one of the most interesting things about ATEM Mini Pro is, and one of the most important uses for the multi-view, is when you're streaming and recording, you've got streaming and recording and audio mixer status in the multi-view as different views. When you're busy switching, particularly if you're doing the job by yourself and you've got some fixed cameras, you really need to know what you're recording and your live stream status is all okay. If it's okay, if it's still running without any problems. Now, you can see that in the ATEM software control, but you've also got views in the multi-view, and there's a bit more information in there. So we've got dedicated views for each one of these functions. Now, this is important. Like if you've got 10,000 people watching your live stream, you really want to know you're on air and your streaming's okay. So you can see the status at the bottom of view, the bottom left, sort of left of center one down the bottom there. You can see the record status. Sorry, the right of center is the record status. The left of center is the streaming status there. Now you can see the information in there is also the same information that's on the display status down the bottom there. but you've got some much bigger indicators. So I can stop and start recording, for example, and you can see it stop and start. You can also see these big disk status indicators and really help you stay aware of what the state of your disk is, so how much space you've got left. And also if I do this disk switch, you'll see it switch across because it's showing both disks. So it moved across to the next second disk. Now I've got a lot of space on there. You can see I've got 57 hours of record time on there. You know, the H64 is fantastic. And they really help you, those big status indicators really keep you aware of what's going on with your disk management. So it's really good. Now you can also see the volume name on the bottom there, and these are just called disk 1 and disk 3. There's time remaining and the space remaining. Just below the time remaining is the space remaining, so you see how much disk space is there. Now the streaming palette shows when you're on air. It shows the cache, which we talked about before, and the data rate's big as well. So you can see it's 8.21 megabit a second there is what we need. And when you start streaming, you can see there's a big status on air indicator that shows you just very clearly what's going on. Now the last view on the right-hand side is an interesting one. It's the audio mixer status. You can actually see all the pocket cameras coming in, all picking up my audio. So when I'm making noise, you can see all the audio inputs. Now these turn on and off with the channel indicators. So you can see them turn on and off there. I'm changing one. I'll put it back onto audio follow video. But you can see they, as the audio channels turn on and off, you can see the status change. They also show any EQ or dynamic effects you might have added. So if you go into the audio mixer, I can go into the Fairlight page in the ATEM software control and add some EQ, and you can see it actually the status comes up there. So you can see all the audio meters. The actual, sorry, just one thing that's worth mentioning before I go to the Fairlight page, the microphone inputs are also there as well, but at the moment they're turned off. If I turn them on, you can see they highlight as well, but I've got no microphones plugged in. So let me go to the Fairlight page, or audio it's actually called in here, sorry. That is a Fairlight audio mixer, but it's the audio page. I'm getting confused with DaVinci, so it's been a long month. So as I've got in here, I can go in here and set, say if I set some EQ, do some wacky EQ, you can see that the EQ indicators come up on the status for camera 1 because that's the one I'm adjusting. And I'll also put on I'll put on the compressor as well. And now you can see that the dynamics, that means, DN means dynamic. So you can see I've got some audio processing applied. And so here I am busy doing a job and I've got transitions that I'm working on, but I can look down at my multi-view and see what's going on with the entire audio input of the ATEM Mini Pro. And that's really good because it means you don't need to put audio meters over the top of the other camera views. Even though you can still do that, you don't have to do that. And as you adjust levels, you can also see the levels adjust as well. So if I go to input 1 and I start changing the level, you can see down the bottom I've got the indication of the gain applied. So I can even tell the audio level that I'm set for. I'll run that gain up a bit so you'll see that meter gets higher. So now it's a bit higher. Well, actually the camera's in different positions. So you can even see the audio gain in the multi-view. So you can see that the ATEM Mini Pro multi-view's got a lot more features than just monitoring all your cameras. Yeah, it's got all the status information for what's going on with the recording and streaming and everything like that. You know, we think it's going to be very useful for more complex work where you can see all your sources, you can see what's going on with the streaming, recorder status, all on a single monitor. You know, looking at a single monitor is much simpler when you're doing live switching because it's just all there. And you know, you've always got this ATEM software control, but it's more of a off the side thing. You don't have to kind of be looking at that, but you're looking at your cameras, you've got it all there on one display with enough information to know that everything's working okay. And I'm still streaming from before. I've been streaming for 32 minutes. There you go. Now the ATEM Mini Pro will retail for $595 and we started production today, so it should be available very soon, although there's obviously been some problems with so many flights cancelled. Getting things through has been a little bit tricky, but we're getting there. As you can see, there's the slide with the price. Now we think this new model will be a really nice complement to the original ATEM Mini, and you can really choose the model you need based on the type of work you're doing, whether you need all the capability here or not. Now, so that should be very exciting. I can't wait to see what people do with the new ATEM Mini Pro. Now the last thing I wanted to really talk about, well actually I've got two more things to talk about, but the last update I've got is we've got a new HyperDeck Studio Mini update. Now HyperDeck Studio Mini is really popular and it's even a great clip player for the ATEM Mini. I'll bring one out here. Here it is here. You can see it's a tiny little HyperDeck. In fact, the update for this and the ATEM Mini Pro, it's actually running the same codec and same software. You can see on the back you've got a HDMI out, so you can use it as a great clip player for ATEM Mini Pro. I'll put it on here so you can see it. Now, the new software, it's a big update. I mean, this is a big update we've done for this. We've got a lot of them out there, so we really wanted to do something to upgrade it and add some new features and some of the, basically a big collection of stuff that people have needed. It's almost like a whole new HyperDeck Studio Mini, actually, this software. It's a big one. Now, one of the biggest things we've done, we've got longer file recordings but in a single file. So now you can record at least 3 hours, depending on the frame rate, at least 3 hours before it spawns off another file. Before it was about an hour, I think. If you record it for more than an hour, it would create another file. Now it's over 3 hours before it does a second file, which is very useful. We've also got a whole new H.264 codec. It's a better quality codec for the same data rate, so it really adds a lot of higher quality, just a high quality for the same data rate, which is fantastic for editing use. If you're taking those H.264s off to an editing system, they're really, some of the higher quality ones are really post-production quality or broadcast quality. Now the big thing though is for broadcasters, it's true interlace support. We've added true interlaced support in the H.264 files when you're recording on this. So you get 1080i 50, 1080i 5904 and things like that. So that's really good for big broadcasters who are running interlace-based systems. The other thing we've done is we've added an AAC audio codec so that those H.264 files can be direct uploaded to YouTube. So this means when you're playing back, like when you're recording files on it, masters on it, you can just upload them directly. Now the other thing that's good about this is that you can play back the files from the ATEM Mini Pro. So even the lowest streaming data rates, it'll actually play those. So that's really cool. So you can obviously switch to the other video codecs. There's ProRes and other codecs in there like that, and audio codecs as well. It's very flexible. You can change all the different codecs, but I think the H.264 workflow is really exciting. A couple of other little things we've done. The advanced media protocol support has been added into the RS422 remote port, so we've got that now. And a big thing we've done, when HyperDeck Studio Mini first shipped, its FTP speed, you can actually upload files onto the cards and download files onto the cards with the FTP protocol through the Ethernet. Now that speed used to be 2 megabits a second when it originally shipped. Now we did a couple of upgrades and we got it to about 60 megabits a second. Now it's 110 megabits a second, so it's as fast as the SD cards that are plugged in the front of it. So it's very, very fast. Like you can upload files and download files really quickly. Now the new HyperDeck 7.1 update is a free update and it'll be available today. So you can just go and download that and it's, update your HyperDeck Studio Mini, get a whole new HyperDeck essentially. So I thought before I finish up, it might be worth talking about how powerful these ATEM Mini switches really are. Even though the ATEM Mini is small, you can expand it and use it the same way broadcasters work. Which means you can totally transform how ATEM Mini works if you add hardware panels. And so, if you're doing bigger jobs, you can keep using ATEM Mini. You don't have to change to a bigger switcher. You can still use it. It's easy to think of ATEM Mini as being a simple switcher because it's so small. But if you add like a 1ME advanced panel, you can really see how big it is. Now I've got an ATEM 1ME advanced panel over here, so I thought I might show you how to use it. So I'll connect it up. I've got, obviously I've been connected direct to the software here, but what I'll do is I've got a couple of cables here that loop through those two switches, so I'll plug them in and plug them here. You see my software interface has gone off and I'll get rid of this cable. There it is there. Now I'm plugged and looped through, you can see the panels have come up, and because I'm looped through the switcher, I'll turn my streaming off. I'll reconnect, there it is there. And there's my control, come back up. Now, the great thing about an ATEM 1ME panel, I'll go down if you can follow me down. You get separate buttons for everything because the panel's got a lot more space than obviously we've got here. So you can really do, like you've got dedicated buttons for everything. That's why it's so powerful and so fast. So if you follow me down, I can come down here and show you. So if you look at the front panel, you can do the switching along the preview row. Down here, it's separate of the program row. So what you switch up here directly puts the program on air. But down here you can do the preview row selection separately. And you've even got labels. The input numbers are labeled here. And then you've got your buttons down here for your auto transitions and your cut. So it's pretty cool. You can see the front panel of the, and if you actually look down there, I think you can see the front panel of the ATEM Mini Pro switching as I do these switches, see? So I'm controlling that little switcher down there, all the way down there. And you can see it reflecting what you're doing, but obviously here you've got broken into separate rows for the preview and the program. And you can see I can also cut there. You can see it's cutting the source. I can select any other source on the preview bus. I can cut to that, and I select that source. You can see it on the preview windows as well, see? That's where the program preview switching is really good, because you can select which source you want. So you want that one, and cut to that. Now the program's cut to that. And of course you've got the auto there as well. And also you can change between different types of things. You can change to a wipe. Oh God, it's got a diamond wipe in there. I didn't know that was set. There's a dip control, DVE, and you can even use the T-bar. See, and that moves the transition manually. So if I go back to a mix, you can get a nice sort of blended mix. Particularly useful sometimes in concerts when you want to blend things. You've also got all the system control menus over here, so you can go through different menus and access different processing in the switcher, all from the front piece. So there's direct buttons in here to do things. Plus, you've also got a downstream keyer over here. So you can see I can turn on the downstream keyer. There's the graphic, and I can cut it on and off. You can actually see it's a very close reflection of the software interface. What's also interesting is I can tie the switch, see when I tie it, and then when I do the transition. Now I'm tying my downstream keyer on and off with the transition, so when I do the transition, it also turns on the downstream keyer at the same time. Really powerful. You've even got a big joystick here for moving DVEs around. So if you're doing a picture-in-picture effect, you can move the DVE around. Now there's even 4 ME buttons along here. A10 Mini Pro is a 1 ME switcher, but this panel will actually control up to 4 separate MEs and a bigger switcher. So it's pretty exciting. And now what's really cool is because we've got camera control, we can also use the camera control panel. So this is the A10 camera control panel over the side here. It lets you control 4 cameras. So I'll move down here so you can see it. There it is here. And you can see if I'm adjusting one of the cameras, so you can see I can adjust the camera there. Now it allows up to 4 cameras to be adjusted at the same time, but you can also change the camera numbers really easily. So you can actually do more than 4 cameras, which doesn't matter so much with A10 Mini Pro, but it obviously when you're running a bigger switch, you can do that. Now you've got different control sections here. You've got some menus here. You've got some of the camera settings. You've got color correction settings down here. And then the main control here is this iris control. That's the iris, and when you rotate it, it's black level. So I'll go down and I'll put camera 4 on here. Then you can see me adjust camera 4. See there it is there. That's the iris and the lens. So you can see that's similar to what the software had. And if you rotate, you can adjust the black level. So you can bring the black down a little bit, maybe bring it up a bit brighter, it adds a bit more contrast, depending really what kind of feel you want. Now the other cool thing is you can even do color tints, but this time you've got 3 knobs. So you can do red, green and blue in black, and you can do red, green and blue and white. So I can adjust the tints there. I'm doing it crudely, of course, you can see. One interesting thing is one of the CCU guys used to tell us that one of the tricks they do is they only adjust the red and the blue channel. They leave the green channel as it is, and I'm not a colorist, so I actually find that a really good trick. So you can always tell if you're a little bit cool or a little bit warm in a picture. So you can add a little bit of red or blue tint. If you leave the green where it is, it's a really nice way of not getting lost, because I often, when I'm using a trackball or a color wheel, I just get a bit lost and end up resetting all the time, but it's nice to actually have the direct knobs for that, which is pretty cool. Now there's also a wide range of camera settings. You can see I've got all the bunch of different buttons there. It's quite cool. It's a bit hard to reach over and see it. You can adjust the gain, which is obviously ISO from a camera terminology, but gain, the same thing's called gain in the TV industry. You can adjust focus. There's a focus thing there. You've got a call button, which just flashes the tally. There's also even the color bars button, which wherever it is. If you push the color bars, it'll bring bars out, so if you're trying to test a camera. And what's really exciting is I think both these panels are really great together. You know, when you see these panels together like this and you've got the multi-view on a display behind them, you don't even really know that it's an A10 Mini switcher doing the work. You know, the A10 Mini Pro over here is doing all the work, and it looks like, but it looks like the panels and the multi-view are the switcher. Like this looks like your switching setup, but it's really the switcher here, the little A10 Mini Pro, that's doing all the work. And so, what's really great about this is you can really use the same switcher in a small way or a big way, and it's it's the same switcher, but it's a very different workflow. And plus, these panels work on any model of A10 switcher, so you can just move them to a bigger switcher in the future if you need a lot more inputs and and you're doing really big jobs. Okay, so that's all we have for this update. I just wanted to thank everyone again for all your support, and also I just want to thank everyone at Blackmagic Design. Everyone's worked so hard on these products, and it's not an easy situation at the moment to be doing this kind of work when there's so many engineering people working together, but they're all working from home. We've worked very hard on these, so we really do hope you like them. Again, please be safe. This is a terrible time at the moment with the COVID-19 virus, and we just want to make sure we all get a chance to catch up again at trade shows in the future once we get through all this. But I've got a lot of confidence, a lot of smart people working on this problem right now, and so hopefully we get through it soon and we're all back to work, and everything will be okay, and we will get a chance to meet up and nobody gets hurt. So look out for yourselves. Really, we are worried and thinking about you. So thanks for watching, and really do hope to see you at some time in the future soon.